This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there, welcome to this edition of Global Business Africa. In the course of the hour, we'll run through the business news stories you need to know about from the continent and beyond. But first, a quick run through the markets for you. So off the back of today's gains, the JSE All Share has gone up by nearly 10% so far in 2021. Nigeria's main index, however, does continue this February decline. It's fallen by at least 0.1% in Monday's session. We'll also be speaking about the business of media in the course of the hour, as East Africa's largest media firm implements a soft paywall across its continent. Shares in Nation Media Group closed nearly 1.2% lower today. We'll be speaking to the firm's editorial director. Here's what's coming up tonight. Ethiopian Airlines delivers its first shipment of COVID-19 vaccines in Africa. We'll explore why Nigeria's central bank has told local banks to reject cryptocurrency transactions and block any related accounts. And shipments of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine have started to fan out across continental Europe. Our starting point of the hour, however, is of course on the matter of the pandemic. A team of experts led by the World Health Organization says it is extremely unlikely that the coronavirus that has plagued the planet really for most of last year, right into 2021, leaked from a lab in the central Chinese city of Wuhan. The team are in China as part of a global scientific study into the origins of this pathogen. Here's CGTN's Wang Hao with more.
The WHO team, which included Chinese experts, have completed their work in Wuhan, the city which reported the first instances of the virus in late 2019. Part of the research centered on trying to understand how the virus transmitted from natural hosts to humans. They've studied 4 possibilities, including direct transmissions, as well as transmitting through cold chains, intermediate hosts, or laboratory. The experts found in bats and pangolin a virus that has a similar genetic sequence with the novel coronavirus. But a similarity is not enough to make it a direct ancestor, adding that the other species may also be potential natural hosts. From samples taken from bats in Hubei province, experts did not find any evidence of the coronavirus or related viruses. The experts said they had also not found any existence of the coronavirus in samples taken from other wild animals in other parts of China. There were accusations that the virus leaked from a lab in Wuhan, but the team of experts ruled this out.
The laboratory incident hypothesis is extremely unlikely and to explain the introduction of the virus into the human population, and therefore is not a hypothesis that will implies to suggest future studies into our work to support our future work into the understanding of the origin of the virus.
The expert team said Huanan Market, which was linked to the early cases in Wuhan, may have been a major point of transmission for the virus. But they said other parts of the city could have experienced similar rates at the same time. Wang Hao, CGTN.
China is sending its first batch of vaccine aid to Equatorial Guinea. The Chinese Foreign Ministry says this is in line with an earlier pledge to provide support and help countries on the African continent fight the pandemic. The vaccines in question are set to arrive in the capital, Malabo, on Wednesday morning. China's head of state Xi Jinping last year did announce that China's vaccines would be made a global public good. For the batches of vaccine aid are expected to head to other African states in the months to come. Now then, let's turn to the business of news. The largest media firm in East Africa has rolled out a paywall, a soft paywall, across its online properties starting today, as it commences the long process of replacing lost revenues from print and broadcast content with money from online subscriptions. Now, annual revenues at Nation Media Group did peak all the way back in 2013 at about 121 or so million US dollars, but they've fallen every successive year since to just over $82 million in 2019. Now, the thing is, it's not that Kenyans are consuming less news. What has changed is the way in which that news is actually being consumed. Consider this data point, for example. In the 5 years to 2019, the volume of English newspapers sold in the country fell by 20%. But the average number of daily visitors to news websites in the country rose by over 80% over the same time. So the trend suggests the demand for news has not changed, but where and how it's consumed is the key change point. But in a market where consumers have been accustomed to not paying for news online, how will nation media convert those millions of online consumers into paying clients? That's a question I put to the firm's editorial director, Mutuma Matthew.
I think there is a strong element of faith involved in business and risk-taking. By and large, people are not used to paying for content online. But from what we have seen in other jurisdictions, and from the statistics that we have from early testing, we think that we'll get a critical mass of people who are willing to pay for compelling, good quality, relevant content.
So to what extent then do you expect this transition, at least on the revenue side of it, for the revenue that will come in from subscriptions, from digital ads, to at least offset to a large extent the decline in revenue we've seen from the decline in print circulation revenue and print ad revenue?
You know, the print and broadcast side of business is recovering from the effects of last year. The media business in Kenya remains very strong and very profitable. And then on the other hand, even though we are determined to see revenue from the digital side, we know we won't be in a hurry to begin to see digital flows at any meaningful level. But we think that maybe in 2-3 years, maybe that side of the operation will be just as profitable as the other side.
One of the stats that stood out for me when I was looking at the industry statistics, on average, you're looking at around 2.9, maybe 3 million people who visit news websites on a daily basis within the country. If you use that as our starting point, what percentage of that number do you have to convert into paying clients in order to make this operation as profitable as you hope within that 2 to 3 year window you've identified?
There is an industry standard of the rate of conversion, but we have to be careful about that because it depends on the local circumstances. In some markets, it's an average of 1%. In other markets, it's much higher. But let's remember that Kenya is a heavily digital market. In most countries in Africa, and probably in most other parts of the world, people are not used to making mobile payments. But this is digital country. People consume media. People shop. People make payments for rent, for their air tickets, for virtually everything on their mobile devices. So I think it might be a lot easier for us to convert our readers and the rest of our audience into payers because of the ease of mobile payments within the economy.
How many have signed up to date for specifically for the content that they would need to access only under Nation Prime?
We fired up the paywall yesterday. I think it's very, very early for us to put figures to some of these things, but our expectations are not very high. But I think we are doing, on average, 2,000 people a day. That might pick up. That may slow down. But we're taking a long-term perspective. If at the end of 2021, we have between 500,000 and 1 million registered users, because when you build that kind of audience and you understand it and you can interact with it, and it becomes a lot easier now to do the subscription, and also it becomes easier for you to serve that audience, not just with content, but also with a certain level of advertising. But if we can register between 500,000 and 1 million users by the end of 2021. And if we have maybe 50,000 to 100,000 subscribers, then we will consider ourselves to have done reasonable.
Let's start our company news wrap in telecommunications. Africa's largest mobile operator, MTN, says it has concluded an agreement to sell and fully exit its 20% stake in Belgacom International Carrier Services to Proximus for all of about $122 million. Now, Proximus is the majority owner of BICS, whose equipment handles global calls, text and internet traffic across the world. Another minority owner, Swisscom, is also selling its 22.5% stake in BICS, also to Proximus. AngloGold Ashanti, the world's third largest gold miner, expects its annual earnings to more than double. It's a bit of a trend we're seeing with miners this year. This will be boosted by a surge in gold prices in 2020 as investors rush to buy the precious metal, which is seen as, and still is by some, seen as a safe haven asset in turbulent times. For the year ending in December, the miner expects to report a headline earnings per share of anywhere between 229 US cents and 247 US cents. Now that compares with 91 US cents, which is reported in 2019. South Korea's Hyundai Motors has announced that it's no longer in talks with Apple to build the tech company's planned autonomous electric vehicle that effectively wiped out $2.4 billion off its market cap. Hyundai stock slumped by 4.3% following the news. Shares in its affiliate, Kia Corporation, also fell by an eye-popping 12.8%. Kia shares have jumped 61% since Hyundai initially confirmed early in January that Apple and Hyundai were in talks to develop self-driving electric vehicles by 2027. And finally, SoftBank has reported a record profit in its Vision Fund as a surging stock market lifted the value of its portfolio companies. The Vision Fund reported $8 billion in profit for the quarter ending in December, surpassing record numbers set just a quarter earlier. Now, a global rally in tech shares has boosted the value of SoftBank's stakes in publicly traded firms like Uber, and it paved the way for initial public offerings from the likes of DoorDash. That's a run through your company headlines. You're watching Global Business Africa. Time for a short break. Here's what's coming up. Nigeria's ordered local banks to reject cryptocurrency transactions and block any accounts trading in them. And we'll explore how a startup law in Tunisia is offering a platform for innovative ideas to go to market by young people.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business, only on CGTN.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back to the program. You're watching Global Business Africa. Now, just like the rest of the world, Africa's aviation industry has been massively affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The International Air Transport Association, or IATA if you prefer, projections towards the end of last year forecast that the continent's aviation recovery will be a lot weaker than expected. In fact, it might be just 30% of traffic and revenue levels that we saw back in 2019. Now, in absolute numbers, the region's expected to see around 45 million travelers in 2020, maybe rising to 70 million travelers this year. A full return to 2019 levels of 155 million travelers running around the continent is not expected until at least 2023. Now, though domestic travel, to be fair, is picking up across the continent as countries reopen their borders, international travel remains heavily constrained amid the discovery of new COVID-19 variants. So what then should you expect as far as African aviation, and even global aviation really, is concerned? Let's explore some options. John Strickland is the director at JLS Consulting. He joins us now live on the line from London. John, good to see you on the program. So let's start with what we need to get people flying once again. Vaccine passports have gotten a lot of attention as one way of getting people to fly safely again. But assuming we actually implement it, between airlines and health authorities, what do we need to do to make that a reality?
I think, first of all, we need to have a much greater efforts from governments worldwide to work together to take a standardized approach to regulation and controls of air travel. We're seeing every government doing its own thing. Even here in Europe, there are differences in approach from one country to another. We see that also in other continents, including Africa. Now, airlines, by their very nature, are flying between not just cities, but continents every day, and trying to manage a constantly changing rule book in terms of building passenger confidence and being able to plan schedules is proving to be pretty impossible. Quarantines may be a rather blunt tool being used right now. Vaccinations, hopefully, as they start to take hold, will reduce the need for that. But airlines have to have a framework which is consistent across countries and which they can inform customers about and plan their own schedules. That's the only way we're going to get to a meaningful recovery in travel.
Ideally, that should be fairly straightforward for large blocks like the EU, for example, or the US because of the sheer size of that particular market. But what exactly would be the basic building blocks here? What are the bare minimums that airlines can agree on and say, OK, fine, we'll agree with, say, leaving middle rows open, like what Delta's decided to do?
Well, one thing that airlines have been asking for globally is testing before departure. That's a key element in trying to make sure that nobody actually boards an aircraft who is affected already or infected by the virus, and there are means to do that. But again, it requires a working with the authorities in terms of methodology, in terms of costings of that. Leaving middle seats free, for example, yes, Delta has agreed to extend that, but it's not a permanent solution because capacity taken out ultimately means that either ticket prices are affected upwardly or airlines lose money in their operations. There has to be more of an effort to ensure that we don't have passengers boarding in the first instance, and that then confidence is built in terms of processes going through airports to maintain social distancing, boarding the aircraft, simplifying processes in baggage collection, and that means more automation in the whole travel process. And airlines themselves have already introduced a lot of efforts in terms of deep cleaning onboard aircraft, the way in which crews themselves are tested pre and post flight. There's a lot of work being done already, but it's a long, slow process because, of course, we are still very much in the midst of this pandemic right now.
Indeed. So last October, IATA did forecast they don't expect to see traffic, at least across Africa, getting back to 2019 levels, at least until 2023. So two questions using that as a baseline. One, it does imply that African carriers will have a lot of free capacity. And B, it also does imply that a lot of the aircraft they bought on leasing terms will be a bit challenging, for lack of a better word. So how do lessors then adjust to that free fall in demand?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we're seeing, as you mentioned in your intro, most international flights grounded currently. We were 85% down globally last year, so there was not a market that wasn't touched. There are swathes, thousands of airlines, aircraft grounded all over the world. A lot of that capacity is being permanently retired. Other parts of the airlines fleets are grounded for long-term periods, running certainly into months. It's not a question of days or weeks, but much of that capacity has to be maintained from a point of view of the integrity of the aircraft in terms of operating systems. It requires engineering, requires inspection on a regular basis. So there's a lot of cost, even for airlines that are virtually hibernating, and they're spending millions of dollars every day just to exist. So yes, some capacity has to be disposed of, costs have to be cut, the loss of blood going out in cash cash drain every day has to be minimized. That's the key focus. Now, many of Africa's airlines were already financially challenged even before this pandemic. This only adds salt to the wounds, a significant amount of salt. It's really damaging. So that effort has to be uppermost in the minds of airline management. And the leasing companies themselves, who are providing aircraft to many of the world's airlines, they themselves are looking at the health of their customers. Where they can, they are giving payment holidays and improved credit terms. But of course, they have to manage their own risk. They will only do that to those airlines where they are confident they will come back with a successful return to business in due course, even if that is in the process of years down the line. And again, different leasing companies have different aircraft in their portfolio. Now, the big question is what aircraft will be the most popular in the future? And again, fuel efficient aircraft, probably typically smaller aircraft in all categories, are going to be in greater demand. And that's where we'll see a shift in terms of inventory amongst the leasing companies and for the airlines themselves who actually buy aircraft.
One last question for you, John, very quickly, because we've got 30 seconds on this. It sounds like there's a lot of risk to go around here. Ultimately, does that eventually have to end up on public balance sheets being borne by government?
Not necessarily. Certainly in the case of Africa, many airlines are publicly owned, but we've seen a lot of examples around the globe of airlines raising liquidity on their own account, but that is only a reflection of how well those airlines are managed. Airlines can't go out and raise liquidity if they don't demonstrate they have sound business plans and capable management. And a challenge, again, we see quite often, sadly, in Africa is political interference in the running of airlines. I've never, to be honest, seen a politician who knows how well to run an airline as a good airline manager. So the more the political hands can be off and the more airlines can be run by competent management, the better chances are of recovery and the less need for excess debt to be taken on.
Indeed. John Strickland, Director, JLS Consulting. Thank you very much for your inputs this evening. Now, we're still on the business of aviation. Africa's largest carrier, and well, before the pandemic, the only profitable one, Ethiopian Airlines, says it's more than ready to transport vaccines pretty much across the world. Ethiopian Airlines recently delivered its first shipment of COVID-19 vaccines on the continent to Chad. The carrier delivered many personal protective equipment loads, or PPEs if you prefer, across the continent and the world too, right after the start of the pandemic. With the details, here's CGTN's Kirum Chala.
Ethiopian Airlines has been preparing for months for the delivery of vaccines right across the world, and it has successfully built the required world-class cold chain for that purpose.
We have been building the cold chain, cold storage warehouses, compartmentalized with different temperature requirements as per the temperature requirement of the medical shipments, pharmaceuticals, and including the vaccine. We have built a cold storage ranging from -25 up to +25 degrees centigrade. We have -25 deep freezers, and we have also pharmaceutical storages from 2 to 8, 15 to 25. So in terms of infrastructure, it is very well prepared.
Africa's award-winning airline has in the past prepared many planes, first for transportation of PPEs and now for the delivery of vaccines worldwide. In addition to its 12 freighter planes, ET has converted 16 passenger planes to strengthen its cargo unit.
We have converted 16 passenger aircrafts that can carry only cargo, only vaccines, with 7 of them are Airbus 350, 3 of them are 777-300s, 2 of them are 777-200s, and we have also converted 787-900s too. And of course, we have also the small one, Q400, 2 of them, that can be helpful to distribute regionally.
ET will continue delivering vaccines from China to Africa. Recently, the logistics arm of China's Alibaba Group signed an agreement with Ethiopian Airlines to launch cold chain air freight for transporting temperature-controlled medicines.
With Shenzhen Airport in the southern part of China, Alibaba is also located in that airport. So the airport has enough facilities to handle vaccines. So the airport, together with Alibaba Logistics and Shipping Unit and Ethiopian Airlines, we are promoting co-branding together on how ready we are to prepare to transport these important vaccines, which are desperately waited by human beings in the entire planet.
From health ministries to heads of state and governments throughout the continent, Ethiopian Airlines has been acknowledged and appreciated for the on-time and efficient transportation of COVID-19 consignments across Africa. Now, experts say ET can repeat the same track record in delivering vaccines to Africa by making Addis Ababa a hub for continental vaccines distribution. Gurum Chala, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
On to West Africa, where Nigeria's central bank has ordered financial institutions to shut down all accounts involved in the transfer or exchange of cryptocurrencies. Africa's largest economy has become a massive market for cryptocurrency trading, particularly in Bitcoin, and it's among the leading ones in the world. But the central bank holds a very different view. It's been warning for several years now that cryptocurrencies are not regulated entities and nor are they legal tender as far as it's concerned in the country. From Abuja, here's CGTN's Phil Ihaza.
Ayola Daudu has been trading in cryptocurrency for 8 years. He teaches other young beginners to trade as well. He says the recent ban by the government on crypto trading in Nigeria has cast doubt on the business.
Several people are panicking, and it's not good for the business anyway, because you don't want to put your money, you want to withdraw your money, and so many people are complaining. And for me, I believe it's quite challenging. Because
cryptocurrency is a digital medium of exchange, also called crypto coins, created by programmers for businesses to transact. It's different from the conventional currencies like the naira or dollar because it's a set of numbers unique to the owner and cannot be regulated by financial institutions. The Central Bank of Nigeria says many criminals could launder money through cryptocurrencies as a way to avoid government scrutiny.
They can't regulate the supply, they can't print it, they can't determine its value, they can't track who owns a cryptocurrency and who doesn't own a cryptocurrency. And so, it's something that they're still trying to learn about, they're still trying to adapt to. And for that reason, the Nigerian Central Bank and, central banks in a couple of countries are a bit wary of crypto.
Bitcoin, the first cryptocurrency released in 2009, is now valued at over $45,000 per Bitcoin. And within the last 5 years, Nigerians have traded in more than $500 million worth of Bitcoins, making it the second highest trading country after the US. That's according to a top Bitcoin trading platform, Paxful.
With the notable rise in value of cryptocurrencies, many Nigerians now see it as a digital asset to make extra income and investments, especially as the country's economy is currently under recession and unemployment rate is at record highs.
Although crypto traders in Nigeria may not necessarily lose their investment, they may not be able to buy or withdraw the coins directly into their Naira accounts while the ban holds. Experts say the government may need to develop ways to adopt the currency as a legal tender, just like the US, so that citizens can take advantage of the benefits of crypto.
People are investing in crypto as a way to hedge against inflation. You don't want to keep your money in Naira. Today, inflation is 15.7%. People are trying to protect their earning power, right? And so people are investing in crypto. You can't just wipe all these benefits away, with a stroke of a regulation. It's important to innovate around it.
That's something crypto traders like Ayola are hoping the government does soon so that more people can trade easily with crypto in Nigeria. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
They don't look at the short-term investment.
Now, back in April 2018, Tunisia became the first country on the continent to pass an entrepreneur-focused law known as the Startup Act. That law effectively provides eye-catching incentives, including a state-funded salary for up to 3 founders per company during the first year of operations, tax breaks, and a 1-year leave period for both public and private sector employees to set up new enterprises. 3 years on, what exactly has changed? Here's CGTN's Adin Chouachi with that report.
There are 401 labeled startups in Tunisia, Authorities say the Startup Act is providing support from the stage of the project idea to that of the launch of the business and its internationalization.
The Startup Act is a unique legal framework in Tunisia. It was designed in a collaborative and participatory manner with all the stakeholders of the startup ecosystem, entrepreneurs, accelerators, investors, administrations and civil society. The government accompanies entrepreneurs and grants many incentives to develop their businesses.
Alien Dimension is one of the most successful level startups in Tunisia. It introduces immersive reality and technologies into education and culture. The company creates educational content through augmented reality and the reconstruction of archaeological monuments.
Our startup transforms extracurricular activities in which children have difficulties such as astronomy into a simple experience through immersive reality. This is how they can grasp any topic through technology. As for the reconstruction of ancient ruins, we created a whole gadget that tourists and visitors of archaeological sites can use to see how the sites looked like thousands of years ago.
Hinda Sahnun is the CEO of EducArt. The level startup offers 3D construction games that illustrate heritage with educational support in augmented reality.
After making his own creation with a construction game, the client uses the mobile application with the augmented reality to travel to any era. The user can discover new civilizations. A Roman gladiator guides him in El Gem Coliseum. He can also learn about dinosaurs which lived in the south of Tunisia.
According to the ICT department, level startups generated cumulative turnover of over $30 million in 2020, 72% of which was generated in the domestic market. These companies employ over 3,000 engineers and technicians in different fields.
Tunisian authorities assert that the number of companies that will benefit from the Startup Act will rise to 1,000 over the next 5 years. The labeled startups will be granted additional funding and incentives in order to create over 10,000 jobs in the ICT and finance sectors. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Now this year, 2021, the African Union is also focusing on promoting African art and African culture. Here's CGTN's Deji Badmos taking a look at the potential of the film industry in Africa in achieving that goal.
If one needed a yardstick to assess the impact of film in telling Africa's story, then Nigeria's Nollywood would easily fit the bill. It's the largest film industry in Africa and widely considered to be the second largest in the world after Hollywood. Nollywood has huge potential to project the African culture, heritage and the continent in a better and more positive way. But some of the industry's fast-rising filmmakers think not enough has been done to leverage on that potential.
If we look at the films coming out of Nigeria right now, a lot of these films exist in a vacuum. They don't directly or deliberately try to promote anything. If anything, they even propagate stereotypes. So with the plans that African Union have this year, it's a good call to order for filmmakers like us to now start thinking again on how we can use our culture to tell our stories and use it to dispel stereotypes.
There is an opportunity for sure for how we can possibly do that, and that requires many voices, I guess, and many different tastes and many different types of offerings to the world, and in that sense could really be the cultural exchange that theoretically it's intended to be, but the idea of it is definitely very, very important.
Even though some Nollywood filmmakers still go out of their way to deliberately project the African culture and values accurately, most filmmakers here place commercial interest over films about culture and the African art.
The problem itself is not the process of making the film. The problem is the environment. The environment forces you to make choices which are more on the side of the business than on the art. And if we are able to make those choices that are more on the art, you will see all these things you're looking for.
The Nigerian film industry is breaking new grounds in other markets. In 2019, Chinese media firm Hua partnered with Nigeria's largest cinema, film production and distribution company Film One as well as South Africa's Empire Entertainment, to set up the West African Film Fund. The fund focuses on investing in original West African cinema movies. This film titled Sanitation Day, which has just hit the cinemas, is a product of that partnership.
What Huawei is doing is more than amazing, you know. I mean, they are deliberately and intentionally doing what they're doing, you know what I mean? And they must be given all the credit for having the foresight to be able to be interested in doing that in the first place, you know? So, and the opportunity, this is only going to grow, and the growth of it is going to be exponential.
The first China-Nigeria co-production is already in the works as a result of the partnership with Huahua Media. Ijibatmo, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
You're watching Global Business Africa. Time for a short break. Here's what's coming up. European countries start to receive the first batches of the AstraZeneca and Oxford-developed COVID-19 vaccines. And cryptocurrencies are extending gains with Bitcoin and Ethereum slamming into record highs.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to the program. Let's run through some of the stories making your headlines at this hour, starting in Somalia. Opposition leaders in the Horn of Africa countries say they no longer recognize President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo after his term expired without a political agreement on a path towards elections designed to replace him. The Horn of Africa nation was supposed to hold indirect elections before the 8th of February, but the deadline was missed as the central government and federal states failed to break a deadlock on how to proceed with the vote. In West Africa, the Nigerian military has reportedly killed more than 50 gunmen. They were suspected of being behind attacks in Zamfara state and other northwestern ends of the country. The government said at least 19 people were killed over the weekend when armed men raided 2 villages in northwest Nigeria's Kaduna state in the latest violence to hit that region. Libya's Joint Military Commission has reported progress in its latest round of meetings. It agreed to start the removal of landmines scattered during the civil war and to open the main coastal highway for commercial and civilian use. The commission is made up of military leaders from rival forces in both the east and the west. The meetings are set to conclude on the 11th of February. And finally, on to Zimbabwe. The country's president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, has filled the cabinet slots which fell vacant when 3 ministers died of COVID-19. Mnangagwa has appointed Frederick Shava, the country's ambassador to the United Nations, as Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Trade. Shava takes over the docket which was held by Sibusiso Moyo, and he was among the cabinet ministers who died of COVID-19 related complications last month. That's the run through your headlines. Now, onto a story you're going to be hearing a lot about over the course of the week. This one in Washington, D.C. The former U.S. President Donald Trump's second impeachment trial is set to start in the Senate. Mr. Trump is charged with inciting insurrection after his supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol last month and engaged in clashes that left 5 people dead. The trial is set to strike a very sharp contrast of tone with Mr. Trump's first trial in early 2020. Democrats argue that they have what they see as overwhelming evidence of his guilt. His defense team, however, claimed that the rioters acted independently. Mr. Trump's legal team has denounced the case as unconstitutional. They say it is absurd to hold the former president responsible for what happened on the Capitol on the 6th of January. Our correspondent Jim Spellman joins us now live from Bethesda, Maryland, just outside the U.S. Capitol, with more details on this particular story. So, Jim, one of the main arguments at play here is that since Donald Trump is no longer the president, this trial in the first place should not be happening. So walk us through the arguments for and against that view.
That's right. So President Trump's defense team will say the whole point of impeachment is to deal with someone like the U.S. president who is not subject to criminal prosecution. The Democrats will argue that there is good precedent for this. And in fact, this has happened in the past with people like judges, but never before with a United States president. They will also argue that one of the punishments, barring someone from ever holding federal office again, shows that this is perfectly reasonable to use for someone no longer in office, since President Trump is eligible at this point to run for one more term as president. So today you're going to hear 4 hours of argument for and against this, and then the Senate will vote on it. Now, we expect it to pass by a narrow margin. Remember, the Senate is evenly split between Democrats and Republicans, 50-50. So it'll be a close vote, but we expect it to move forward. This really, though, provides a political out for many of these Republicans. They can say that they vote for acquittal over these constitutional issues and not have to bring up the actual meat of the issue. Remember one thing, Ramah, this is a political exercise, not a legal one, even though it will resemble a trial.
Indeed. So the former president declined. I believe that Jamie Raskin, the lead impeachment manager, did ask him to appear in his own defense. He declined. But can the impeachment managers then subpoena witnesses and documents to appear in this trial?
So we don't know at this point. We'll have these constitutional arguments today. Then tomorrow, Wednesday, we'll begin the meat of this case. So each side will have 2 days to make their arguments. The Democrats will rely largely on video of the rioters and video of President Trump's speech that led up to that event. So they're going to try to use that primarily as their way of rebutting this. It is possible, though, after the arguments that the Democrats may decide that they have not done enough and they want to call witnesses. They'd have to have some debate and another vote to do that. Republicans are warning this will get extremely messy if they do that. Remember, unlike any other impeachment, every person in the Senate and in the House was a witness, even potentially a victim of what happened. So Republicans say that they will then seek to call Democrats, and they may use video evidence of their own, claiming possibly that some of these Democrats supported Black Lives Matter protests, which then became violent. If they do call witnesses, this could go on for weeks. As it is now, both sides seem to be leaning towards a quick trial, perhaps with a vote as early as the beginning of next week. Mama?
One last question for you, Jim. So Republican senators would need, at least 17 of them, as I understand it, would have to vote with their Democrat counterparts in order to convict Mr. Trump. But is there fear within the party that doing so may turn Donald Trump into some sort of political matter and therefore cost the party some of its base in the 22 midterms?
Absolutely. And really what you're seeing here on many fronts is a battle for the future of the Republican Party. Do these members want to risk crossing President Trump and his rabid base of supporters, or do they feel that they want to position themselves for a post-Trump era of the Republican Party? It's not clear at all which way the majority of this party wants to go. We have outliers on both sides, and many people will be weighing that as much as they weigh the actual evidence before they decide on how to vote. I think that both sides of the Republican Party, the sort of mainstream Republicans that are wary of Trump and the people that are supporting him and want his base of followers to support them, feel like they want to get all of this past them so they have plenty of time to see how it plays out and how they want to position themselves for those midterm elections. But those elections, in some senses, have already begun. There are primary challenges going on. Some senators have said they have not run. So we don't really get a break here from electoral politics in the U.S. and expect every day of this impeachment trial to be as much about future elections as it is about what happened in the Capitol back in January. Ramah?
Indeed. We'll see how this plays out. Jim Spellman, thank you very much. You certainly can expect, of course, more content from Jim Spellman and the team in D.C. Over the course of that particular trial. Now, on to cryptocurrencies. Gains extended in that particular asset class on Tuesday. Bitcoin and Ethereum hit record highs. The boost comes in the wake of Tesla's $1.5 billion investment in Bitcoin. The cryptocurrency posted its largest daily percentage gain in more than 3 years after Tesla made that announcement in its 2020 annual report. Here's John Turrett looking at what the move means for both Tesla and Bitcoin.
Then I wake up this morning in New York to find that he's put $1.5 billion into Bitcoin. And, you know, this raises questions here in New York about the tweets that Elon Musk has been putting out over the course of the last week or so. He added the word Bitcoin to his bio on Twitter and on Clubhouse, which is quite a controversial app and website. He was talking up Dogecoin at one point as well. So people wonder whether he shouldn't perhaps have been letting the regulators here know that he was buying at this level. Apparently he has done that now in a filing to the SEC this morning. But the other thing is that now you will be able to buy a Tesla, assuming you can afford one. I can't, by the way, but you can buy a Tesla with Bitcoin if you wish to. And as a result of all this, Bitcoin is currently up 16%, well above $44,000 per Bitcoin, and Dogecoin was up 30% this morning. It's now up 21% when I checked just now. So finally, we open another week on Wall Street with a battle set between the novices and the professionals, because Janet Yellen, who is the new Treasury Secretary for the Biden administration, has said several times that she'd be quite happy to curtail these cryptocurrencies, that she has linked them to terrorism. She calls them mostly used for illicit funding. But of course, young people, just like Elon Musk, just simply do not see it that way. And of course, this comes a week or so after the GameStop saga. That appears to be fizzling out, by the way. Now GameStop's down 4% at $61. AMC, the movie house chain, down 11% at the moment. But one thing I will leave you with, don't ever underestimate Elon Musk. He has an awful lot of followers who will go wherever he takes them.
The United States Congressional Budget Office says President Joe Biden's plan to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour would add about $54 billion to the fiscal deficit over the next decade. The existing federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour hasn't really been changed since 2009. It remains below historical levels, in fact, when adjusted for inflation. Democrats are pushing to include the higher minimum wage as part of their $1.9 trillion pandemic relief plan. But House committees this week will start crafting the legislation along the lines that the president has requested. But it is unclear whether this minimum wage proposal will actually make it into the final product. The first deliveries of the Oxford University AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine have started in Europe. From Lyon in France to Sofia in Bulgaria, hundreds of thousands of doses have been distributed in line with the bloc's collective vaccine strategy. Now, even with the rollout improving, though, governments remain worried due to limited supplies because of delivery shortfalls from manufacturers.
By the millions, doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine have arrived across Europe. In Bulgaria, the first delivery came in the middle of the night, and quickly it was transferred to the health ministry's temperature-controlled warehouse. In Italy, soldiers have been tasked with guarding and distributing the jabs. Nearly 250,000 doses landed at a military airport outside Rome this weekend, a fraction of what was originally promised.
It does not matter if it's a lot or if it's little. The important thing is that the plan goes ahead without losing a single minute with respect to the arrival and delivery of the doses.
The AstraZeneca vaccine is one of the cheapest on the market, and unlike its competitors, it doesn't require complicated storage and delivery plans. Many EU nations are facing short supplies of the already approved vaccines, including France, which was quick to put the newest delivery to work. Doses arrived Friday night, and by the next day, vaccinations had begun. France has joined Sweden, Germany, and a long list of other EU nations that are giving the vaccine to healthcare workers only, instead of the elderly. Some scientists disagree with the trial data conclusions behind this decision and say there are still too many questions.
The data situation for the elderly is not sufficient. It's important to note here that the problem is insufficient data and not poor data.
The European Union is expecting 40 million doses of the vaccine to arrive before April, a number that's half of what was originally promised by the pharmaceutical giant, but does include an additional 9 million doses following talks between both sides.
China's head of state, Xi Jinping, has hosted a virtual summit for China and Central and Eastern European countries. In his speech, he praised cooperation between the two sides, saying it was based on mutual respect with no political strings attached. He added that all countries involved were equal partners, regardless of the size, and mutual cooperation was an important aspect of multilateralism. He also said that China would cooperate with countries should they have need for COVID-19 vaccines. China has already supplied some vaccines to Serbia, and cooperation in that space is underway with Hungary. China plans to import goods worth about $170 billion from Central and Eastern European countries in the next 5 years. Now, in a country with a time-honoured tea culture, the love of coffee continues to grow at a rapid pace in China. A fresh report shows that Shanghai now has more coffee shops than any other city on the planet. And it's outranking, effectively, those where coffee has been a staple for centuries. As CGTN's Chen Tong finds out, they have white-collar workers to thank for that.
It may look a little strange. Walk through the Western Nanjing Road station on Metro Line 13, and you will find 2 coffee shops right across from one another, and both from the same coffee company. Manna Coffee opened this shop in 2019 and wound up selling hundreds of cups a day. Business was so good, they opened the one opposite just last month. No waiting. And most of the consumers here, as you can tell, are white-collar workers heading for offices nearby.
I have 1 cup a day just to keep going.
I have 2 cups a day. It helps me relieve the pressure of work.
Manner is invading most of Shanghai's business districts. Take Shanghai Media Group building on one of the busiest streets in the city as example. There are 6 Manner shops within 500 meters. The coffee brand now has 129 shops nationwide, most in first-tier cities and 70% of them near office buildings. The shops have no fancy decorations, no fancy desserts on sale, just coffee, fast coffee.
Coffee is a functional drink for some people because Shanghai's working pace is speedy. White-collar workers want to buy a good cup of coffee quickly to give them energy.
Well, coffee started out to be something for your leisure time. It's now part of the daily routine for white-collar workers in Shanghai. You have your coffee while walking to work, sitting in office, or chatting with your colleagues on break time. So why did Shanghai fall so in love with coffee?
Shanghai itself is an immigrant city. It's only a matter of whether you're old Shanghainese or new Shanghainese. People from all over the place brought their habits to Shanghai, and here created a mixture of everything. In recent years, many students who studied abroad have come back to Shanghai and brought their habits here. And of course, Shanghai is fast-paced. People think a cup of tea slows time down, but a coffee lets them work more efficiently.
The university experts even have the feeling that Shanghai's coffee habit and its work habits are part and parcel of the same thing. They say that the more coffee shops a city has, more energy it has.
Shanghai ranks first in the number of coffee shops worldwide, and that wasn't the result of a government policy, but just emerged from the market. We think it's related to Shanghai's personality. As the economic center of China, it's now on the global stage.
All this is leading to tougher coffee competition in the city. Global chain Starbucks now owns the most coffee shops worldwide, and Manner is far from the only smaller brand boiling up quickly here. Since the pandemic started last year, the number of coffee shops in Shanghai has not fallen, but rather has risen by 10%. We are up to 8,200 now. Chen Tong, ICS for CGTN, Shanghai.
Quick run through commodity prices. Brent crude went through $61 a barrel earlier today. In fact, in the last hour or so, it's risen by at least 17% so far this year. Spot platinum prices are also heading up. 10.6% is the gain so far in the year. They're holding close to $1,200 an ounce, and they're bolstering earnings across platinum majors in South Africa. In Pala Platinum, for example, its shares are up 47% in the last 12 months. It reported a 4-fold rise in profits, and trading volumes today were nearly a third above the 15-day moving average. Here's what's coming up. We'll explore the value of cattle in Kenya's Maasai community when we return.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back. Here's a little bit of anthropology for you. Cattle is a key part of culture for many societies across Africa. The animal is held in high esteem and it's often associated with wealth and status. Now, since this year marks the year of the ox in the lunar calendar, CGTN's Daniel Arap Moi examines the Maasai community in Kenya, who are best known for their distinctive cow culture.
The Maasai, a tribe in Kenya, would rather get on with doing what they do best, looking after their cattle. The Maasai view their cattle as the most valuable asset in life, going to extreme length to protect them at all cost. Their cattle are a form of currency and status symbol and form a key part of the family's wealth. From dowry to even a friend, a cow to the Maasai is a resource, maintaining not just a people but a way of life.
If you want to marry a Maasai girl, you'll not be entitled to have that girl if you don't have more than 100 cows. But you have to pay that girl with 10 or 20 cows, so that you can be entitled to own the girl. Failure to that, you will not have to get that girl without a number of cows.
Among the Maasai, the tradition of the dowry still remains a key pillar of unifying a man and woman in matrimony, and that still calls for a valuable number of cows.
When we are given a girl for marriage, we take cows. We take cows like these ones. We take approximately 10 cows and give to your in-laws, and that is the culture.
Cows also come in handy during cultural initiation ceremonies.
You must have as many cows as possible, because on that particular ceremony, a cows like this one, we may slaughter 10 or 7 so that we can celebrate that particular day.
Sampeke, a Maasai pastoralist in Kenya's Kajiado County, says for any Maasai boy to be considered a man, one must have a substantial number of cows to be respected by the elders.
For over 30 years, Sampeke has lived a lifestyle based around his herds, and that's how he intends to live the rest of his life.
Africa remains home to an extraordinary array of indigenous cattle, well over 100 distinct breeds. Daniel Arap Moi, CGTN, Kajiado, Kenya.
A quick run through currencies as we wrap up the program. The Naira weakened by the most in 10 months according to Bloomberg data, trading at 398.10 against the dollar in the formal interbank market. It actually did go as low as 401 to the dollar before pulling back a little bit. Over in East Africa, Fitch slashed Ethiopia's long-term foreign currency issuer default rating down from B to a triple C. The main driver of that choice, according to Fitch, is a government's announcement that it will use the G20 framework for debt treatment beyond DSSI. So if Ethiopia does use that facility, it implies that the country's Eurobond and some other commercial debt would be restructured, and that, in Fitch's view, would qualify as a default event. That's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. As always, we'd like to hear your thoughts on the content you've seen on the programme in the last hour. Many ways to get your thoughts back to us, all of them on your screens right now. I'm Ramah Nyang in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Thank you for your company in the last hour. The World Today is up next from Washington, D.C.